It is the 17th of May 2016. It is now 15 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is Morning Express, and it's time for us to look at the dailies. And joining me is none other than William Oketch. Honorable William Oketch, thank you for coming this morning. And we'll go straight into the dailies. And let's start with the Standard, where Raila's car hit as demos turn ugly. And there is a picture right there, which you'll be seeing shortly, of his windscreen, which is circled, and it was hit yesterday as the riots took a turn.
Yes, certainly.
An ugly turn, for that matter.
What happened yesterday is very worrying, because for the very first time you realize the opposition demonstrators were not allowed, the leaders were not allowed to address the demonstrators, because previously they will come, they will converge, they will sit on the tarmac, and the leaders will get a chance to address them, and thereafter the group will be dispersed. But yesterday you realize the police were determined not to let any of the leaders address the demonstrators.
Right.
And when all hell broke loose, that is when the police violently scattered the demonstrators. And it's a cause for concern, because you are aware that under the National Police Service Act, the new laws, other than the Constitution, the police are supposed to ensure that there is peace in a lawful assembly, because all along they've been saying this is a lawful assembly. So the police, their responsibility has been to ensure that there is peace and protect property, and to make sure that other Kenyans are also not inconvenienced. But I think yesterday what happened, it went a little bit overboard, because you're aware previously the IG, Mr. Joseph Boynet, has been saying that right now the police, they have a new curriculum of training which emphasizes on the respect of human rights. Well, with what we saw yesterday, and even with the pictures and videos that have been going on around social media, I think it was a bit high-handed.
Yes, and well, the police, of course, would say in their defense they were acting on intelligence that there was a Jubilee group that was also coming into in protest, and of course it would have turned really ugly if the two groups met. However, of course, the use of excessive force. Again, with some of the videos I saw, there is one particular one of a gentleman who's literally on the ground.
Cornered.
He is cornered. He is, as it were, you know, somebody who's surrendered. And the police literally thumped the guy silly. And of course, in this case, would have expected that they would, if at all he had broken the law, the thing to do then is arrest him.
Yes, the ideal course of action would have been for the police to arrest him, put him into custody, and subsequently present him into court. But when you watch that video, towards the tail end of that video, you'll realize another police officer will come in and tell him, no, that is enough, do not beat him. So it shows you blatantly that what that officer was doing.
And there is the picture right there.
Yes, there is the picture.
This gentleman.
You see?
Now, what I noticed with this video, because I watched from the before he actually got there, he's singled out from a number of people. So maybe there is reason why he was singled out. However, there is no reason whatsoever. I mean, there's that policeman who comes in and says, look, that's enough. But of course, you see, he comes, he's singled out.
Yes.
Out of a crowd. Maybe he was looting, we don't know, we cannot make that decision, but the point here being, at this point in time, he is subdued. There is really no reason to keep beating the man. If at all he was a criminal, then the thing to do is handcuff him and take him to the authorities and let the law take its course.
Yes, and I think now this is a very good case in point for IPOA, the Independent Police Oversight Authority, to come in, investigate, and find out who are those officers, and so that for the necessary complaints to be handled, because this is a very bad violation.
Extremely inhumane. I mean, and I don't know what he had done to this policeman, but he just wasn't stopping until the other guy comes in and tells him,
no, it's enough.
It's just unbelievable. But anyway, there you go. So, of course, this taking an ugly turn, one would have expected that this being the third time that they were having this protest was going on, that at least there would be some reasonable form of way of doing it. In other words, let the protesters do what they have to do. After all, it's picketing. It is allowed in the Constitution.
Certainly.
Let the opposition leaders address their crowd and those who had turned up. Then after that, everybody goes.
After that, they will have had the chance to disperse them with minimal force. I don't think it will have turned this ugly. And then you realize yesterday's demonstration also, KANU joined.
Right.
We saw pictures of KANU Secretary General Nick Salat in the among the demonstrators.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, that's the headlines right there. Then still on the front page, revealed why Kenya failed doping compliance test. Again, another controversial issue that has been going on. Of course, we had been told or made to believe that the requirements that were needed were already fulfilled, and we were now ready to go forward.
Yes, certainly so. And you even remember last time when we were here, we saw that Parliament worked within a very short time frame,
right,
and they were able to pass the Anti-Doping Act. However, you realize there are some certain provisions which the Kenyan Parliament or whoever it is who was drafting, they were inserted. One of them was the issue of giving the police powers or anti-doping officers powers to arrest anyone whom they reasonably suspect to be engaged in such activities. And also there were those provisions that dealt with issues of stocking drugs, because there is an anti-doping agency international code, right, which regulates the minimum thresholds. The agency was adamant that those provisions do not reflect their code. And that is why they gave a very terse statement. And actually, you're aware that the government had to really dispatch a high-powered delegation headed by the Foreign Affairs CS Amina Mohammed to do the last-minute negotiations that actually saved Kenya's participation in the Rio Olympics.
Yeah, so of course that being very worrying, and I did listen to some statements made by some of our leaders to allude to the fact that without Kenya being in the Olympics, then the Olympics would not be the same. But I guess that would be giving ourselves a little bit of a position that we don't have.
Yeah, it will have been unfortunate.
The Olympics will still go on.
Yeah, it will go on. It will have been unfortunate. We will have lost points on the international rankings.
Yeah, and I think the worst person hit really would be Kenya. As much as we think that the Olympics would suffer, I think would be the ones that are lost, because that, of course, would be very, very, very sad.
Yeah, but there was a reprieve there. Ultimately, Kenya's participation was upheld. We will still be in the Olympics. Good cause for concern. But that one shows it was a lesson in learning that when it comes to compliance with international codes, particularly in a field like sports, then Kenya really need to up its game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Page 8 is where we are at now in the Standard, and a tribunal investigating High Court judge summons Mutunga to testify. And this, of course, is the tribunal that is investigating a Supreme Court judge.
The tribunal actually is investigating the High Court judge, Joseph Mutava.
Mutava.
And this is a very fast. This is a very fast to have the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya being summoned as a witness. And actually, the background to this is that before even this judge could be investigated, there was an allegation that he had sent a text message to a fellow judge seeking to influence the decision of that judge. And the judiciary ombudsperson, that is Honorable Kennedy Bidali, in the course of preliminary investigations, they had actually confirmed that indeed there was this issue of the text message. So at that point, he made recommendations to the Chief Justice, because being that the judge he was a very senior member of the bench, him being the ombudsperson and a magistrate, he could not actually take it up from there. So he made recommendation to the Chief Justice to carry on investigations and possibly to recommend to the Judicial Service Commission. So it is that referral of the Chief Justice that prompted the lead advocate, Mr. Philip Nyachoti, to recommend that the Chief Justice be summoned. Well, this application was granted, and it remains to be seen the D-Day when the Chief Justice will be summoned.
So things are taking shape, and that's the first time that we have a Chief Justice appearing as a witness.
Yes.
All right, moving on to page 12. Now, this has been postponed for ages, but apparently Jubilee Party is to be launched next month. We do know that it has faced kick-starting, what I'd call like kick-starting events, where we almost think it's going to be launched and then something comes up and they postpone it. But apparently, it is official now that it's going to be launched next month.
But still, I think it will be too soon to cork the champagne, because you are aware that the tug of war is the issue of, do we dissolve our affiliate parties?
Right.
Or do we retain them? Because once those parties are dissolved and you have one mother party, which is called Jubilee Party, some of the politicians will think then they will lose the political clout. You know, they'll lose the political clout. For example, being that URP, it has its members of parliament, and when issues come to the floor of the House, they normally have that clout as Rift Valley. So that is the major concern, and that's why you even see rebels like Isaac Ruto, people like the Governor Peter Munya, they're very much resistant to this thing of, let us dissolve our parties. Then they will ask, what is our fallback? What will we do in case we are cornered?
In case we are untwisted, what do you do? Because then you have no power to say anything. You're absorbed within the party.
And then there is the issue of the nominations. Nominations have always been very controversial because most of the times the certificate normally does not go to the person who necessarily wins in the grassroots elections.
Right.
So they're also afraid that should I be denied nominations, certificates,
I have no bargaining power
and I have dissolved my party.
Right.
So it remains to be seen how it's going to play out.
Well, let's wait and see what happens, because there's also the other school of thought that says that is almost a blow to democracy.
Yes.
Because again, at the end of the day, democracy is about coming together despite the fact that you have divergent views. But now when you're absorbed and amalgamated to one party, then that sort of leaves you without any power to say anything, really.
Certainly. So the argument has been that most of the advanced democracies, like the US, like the UK, like Germany, they have two leading parties. Yeah, but you know, these are democracies which have matured over time, 200 years counting. So Kenya is still a young democracy. We are only about into 3 decades after multi-party elections. So democracy evolves and it takes time. Yeah, and it will be very interesting to see how it turns out.
How it comes out.
Yeah.
All right, that's what we have for you on The Standard this morning. And let's now change focus and take a look at the Daily Nation, where the headlines is Raila car hit escort protestants violent. We've already gone on about this, but regarding that particular hit, it is not yet clear whether it was a bullet. There are those who are saying that it could have been a bullet, a live bullet. There are others who say no, it was just a rock. However, the opposition leader Raila Odinga was not in the car as this was happening.
Yes, well, from the postings on social media, all of them were insisting that it is a bullet. The police, the IG gave out a statement last night, and he said that that they are not sure if it was a bullet, and if it was a bullet, they would know. Because according to police standing orders, normally you have to account for every bullet that you use. They will normally do a check. But the opposition leader, Mr. Raila Odinga, was very cautious in what he said. He said he will leave it to the investigations to actually reveal what it was, but he said that the object seemed to be moving at a very high speed.
Very high speed. Yeah. Well, let's wait and see whether the investigating agencies are going to actually give us an answer to that, because unfortunately, many times we have many things that are left pending, and we never get answers once the dust settles. Page 5, Jubilee Group 1's poll team changed, and well, a group of Jubilee MPs has supported calls for the Electoral Commissioners to be sent home, but giving sets of conditions as to how this is going to be done.
Yeah, certainly. When you read in between the lines, you realize that a majority, this call for the IBC to go home, it is gaining traction. A lot of people are chipping in, even from within the ruling Jubilee. There are those MPs who said, well, it is apparent that the IBC has lost support among a great number of Kenyans.
There's no doubt about that.
We do not mind. They're saying we want this Electoral Commission to go home, but tied to that, they're proposing an omnibus reform, whereby the IBC will go home, both the commissioners and the secretariat, they will go home. But then their bargain chip will be then, why can't you extend the election date?
The elections. Yeah, because of course the tricky bit is that even if we change the commissioners today, and change them literally, there is a question as to whether they're going to be fully prepared for the 2017 elections, because there's a lot that needs to be done. There's orientation. They need to get, you know, just basically how things work.
There's voter registration, voter education.
So of course there's that dilemma. However, it looks like that may need to be resolved sooner than later.
Sooner rather than later, but you're aware there was already a court ruling that sets the election date, the Supreme Court ruling, which is binding, that sets the election date to August 2017. Well, if this were to happen, then they will have to amend the Constitution.
And this will have to a parliamentary...
it have to go through the majority parliamentary process, and they have to garner the numbers. For you to amend the Constitution, you have to garner the numbers. And possibly, because it's a constitutional amendment that touches on the issue of the right to vote and elections, possibly it will have to go through a referendum, which is a high calling.
Referendum, meaning now we'd have to go as Kenya and vote as to whether we agree or not.
Exactly, to change the election date.
That would be very tricky, especially given that we have very little time, because should the referendum not go through, then that means we still go to the polls.
You still go to the polls in August.
And that I'm sure would cost this country an arm and
colossal
amounts of money. On page 6, the unfortunate twist of turns of things, and hooligans beat up and robbed us during the protest march. And this is an account given given by Mr. Francis Kago, who is the distribution manager at the Nation Media Group. And this is basically hooligans, of course, took advantage of the tension in the city and literally mugged them.
Yes,
as we call it.
Exactly. It has come out very obviously that now that there are those pockets of demonstrators who took advantage. They robbed innocent wananchi. Other than this, there were also those innocent wananchi who were robbed along Moi Avenue, near Moi Avenue Primary School. They were robbed and it was captured on camera. So I think the onus falls on both the government, security forces, and also the opposition. The onus for the government security forces is to ensure that those pockets of demonstrators who are out to take advantage and to rob wananchi and to raid shops, they should be apprehended. They should face the full honors of the law. The honors also on the opposition leaders is to rein in their supporters, to be able to identify those who among them are breaking the law by robbing innocent wananchi, by harassing people. So I think for what happened yesterday to be avoided going forward, there needs to be conversation between government.
Dialogue, yes, there must be dialogue. There's no way out of this without dialogue.
Certainly.
So, anyway, moving on to page 9. Now, the taxman is raining on some luxury cars. Do you have a luxury car that possibly might be in the interest of the taxman to check it out?
Well, I don't know whether an X-ray will be a luxury car, but all my taxes are paid for. Okay. Certainly.
Well, that's important. But we have luxury cars netted in tax soup, and of course, they went to some of these high-end car bazaars where they have some cars, and some were actually netted as having avoided tax. And it has cost the taxman quite a lot of money. I think it was up to what, 500 million Kenyan shillings?
Yes, this has been a worrying thing. We are very glad that KRA is now having teeth to bite. What has actually been happening, there has been a ring, international ring, whereby luxury cars are stolen from UK. London is the most famous one. They steal it, and then they bring it in as if they're imports of ordinary cosmetics, household goods. They stuck in it inside those containers. So you are aware that if maybe, for example, Mercedes-Benz will cost about 25 million shillings, tax on that will be about 5 million shillings or 7 million shillings. They're bringing it in as household goods. They pay tax for 1 million. So when you pay tax for 1 million, government loses about 6 million.
Correct.
And if they're about 20 of those vehicles which come in, that's a huge loss.
That's a huge amount of
loss.
Money. Yeah. And of course that then gives an advantage to the person selling the car, because they're able to sell it at a fairly lower price. Somebody who brought it in legit.
Yes, they make their kill there. And it was hilarious when you watched Kenyans on Twitter, the investigators. Actually, some of these cars were being tracked down in various streets of Nairobi, and they will have snapshots of this is the car. We have tracked it at this place,
here it is.
And here it is.
Interesting, And just to see Kenyans, taking up that citizen police initiative, which is a good thing. All right, on to page 11. Safaricom audit names bosses in graft, and just in the backdrop of Safaricom announcing some humongous, colossal profits, then some of their bosses found in graft, or their names, alleged that they were involved in graft.
Yes. The issue of public procurement has always been an issue where graft has been unconcerned, because there's a lot of interest, especially where the money is colossal. There's normally a lot of interests, and the tenderpreneurs, as you'll call them, they will go to great lengths to clinch a deal.
Right.
So the report is out. It remains to be seen. Safaricom, which prides itself as a company built on social corporate responsibility, it remains to be seen how Safaricom will respond to that in light of Chapter 6 of the Constitution on leadership and integrity. It remains as a leader in issues of corporate governance. It remains to be seen how they're going to respond to that, being that KPMG is also a very premier and respected audit organization.
Audit firm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's where we're going to wind up our newspaper review on the nation. And let's now move on to the Star, where we have the headlines: Raila's car hit as court goes to court. And Raila's car hit, and court is going to court, and this is in regards to what has been going on, really.
It was an application by Jacoyo Midio, the game MP. Well, he's again going with the same issue, so that the IBC commissioners are removed. But it is interesting because just about a day or two ago, we had the Deputy President go on record and say that they are ready, they are willing, they have a negotiation team in Parliament. But then what they did not want is for court to place conditions on them. But again, if they are going to the parliamentary avenue, then it will have to be on the basis of a petition.
Right. Although Jubilee were placing a condition on the negotiations, and they were saying they will come to the negotiating table on condition that one of the requests is that the commissioners should leave office.
Oh yeah, certainly. Yes. They were just looking at these other reforms, actually, in terms of voter registration, in terms of voter education, and the appointment of those coordinators who will actually supervise the elections at the local level. But now both parties have placed conditions. That one brings us to a deadlock.
That brings us to a deadlock. And one wonders how this is going to be resolved, because at some point something has to give. But the thing that we don't have the privilege of is time. Because we are running out of time as we get closer to 2017, because the other side of it is that we could have commissioners who come into office at the very last minute and still, either way, either Jubilee or CORD may cry foul after the elections, because they may not have been oriented well enough and had been prepared, in good time.
Yes, certainly so. But being that you see more and more people are joining in, yesterday you saw Kanu joined in, maybe probably that will be a waking up call. And with the level of police brutality that was witnessed yesterday, that could probably be a waking call for both government and opposition to sober up and not to be comfortable, and to realize that it's high time that they got into negotiations to resolve this issue of IEBC.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
On to page 6, and MPs to grill IEBC on buying costly BVR kits that fail. I believe that's taking place today.
Yeah, that's taking place today. Last week, the IEBC Vice Chair, Madam Lillian, and also the CEO, Chiloba, they were in Parliament, they were turned away. And the parliamentarians were adamant that they wanted to question the whole commission as entirety, because we are aware the issue of the BVR procurement occasioned the Kenyan government huge loss of money, huge sums of money were lost in that procurement.
And would that possibly be one of the things that CORD could use, depending on how it goes, in regards to having them, quit or leave office because of lack of integrity?
Yes, certainly. You are aware that the issue of procurement is actually a functionality of the Secretariat, headed by the CEO. But allegations have been made that some of the commissioners, two actually have been adversely mentioned, being Commissioner Thomas Letangule and also the chair, Isaac Hassan, that they actually influenced the award of that tender. So that will be a very fertile ground for CORD to take advantage and say these people had a conflict of interest, they influenced a tender, and therefore they need to step aside. Other than the chicken gate scandal.
Yes, which of course is also in question.
Yes.
All right, Business Daily, as we finally wind up our newspaper review, we have there on the headline, senior Safaricom executives named in billion-shilling procurement scam. And this would be worrying. And given that they have made such wonderful and great amounts of profit, but if the executives are involved in, questionable deals, that leaves us wondering, because one might sometimes be tempted to think that the political class are the ones who are really corrupt. But it looks like the private sector is not also left out.
Well, there's a report that came out a while back that tells you that corruption within the private sector is mind-boggling. Because that is why it's perceived that it is unchecked, And you are aware the other time, the private sector, they had a round table with His Excellency the President, when he actually made those declarations to fight corruption, when he declared corruption a national tragedy. And you are aware the private sector was roped in, and they said the hugest amount of corruption is facilitated from the private sector, because it is them that give incentives to government officials.
And actually there's a school of thought that it is the private sector that fuels the corruption, because with tenderpreneurs, with companies that are of course looking for lucrative deals within the government, then they're the ones that, as it were, oil.
They oil that wheel of corruption.
The wheel of corruption. So, well, that's where we're going to wind up our newspaper review this morning, but do stay with us right here on Morning Express.